Hello and welcome to the Penalty Box Perspective podcast. Matt here with you today, but I am not joined alone. I'm not alone, even. Nathaniel not here, but I do have a very special guest here with me today, all the way from the United States in Dallas, Texas. I've got one of the hosts of the DLLS podcast on the All City Network. I've got Sam Nestler here. Sam, how are you doing, bud? You okay?
I'm great. Dealing with the Texas summer, but other than that, fantastic.
Yeah, we had a slight discussion just before we started recording about the difference between what a Texas summer is and what a UK heat wave is. Not even remotely comparable. I mean, we're just not used to any sort of heat, extreme or otherwise. But man, we are fighting for our lives over here. But I know you said it hasn't rained in Dallas in 3 months, so like. I imagine it's all looking pretty dry over in Dallas at the moment. So thank you first and foremost for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time to to speak with us today. We absolutely love having guests on here. Always comes from the other side of the pond to us. Obviously, it's quite hard for us to get involved in the world of hockey. Yet that is obviously what me and Nathaniel are trying to do. But just for our listeners, if you could just give us a bit of a rundown about yourself, really. Obviously, you're one of the hosts of the DLLS podcast, and just how does that look for you in kind of a day-to-day, week-to-week sort of, how does that look for you?
Yeah. I'm the beat writer and one of the hosts, as you said. So I'm kind of the boots on the ground, as well as being on the show. So I'm at everything. I'm at every practice, every event, every game, in the dressing room with the players, doing interviews, press conferences, all that kind of stuff. And then I come on the show whenever I'm available during the season, and I do my post game and pre-game stuff from the arena, which is cool. And then I go on the road. It kind of varies how much I travel during the year, but I go to the playoff games and I go to some big games during the year. So I get to call in from Tampa or from Florida or Carolina, wherever it might be, and do some kind of on the ground stuff, which is my favorite part of the job. Honestly, I love sitting in the studio with those guys and just talking crap, but it's more fun to be on the ground around the players, and that's kind of what I love. So I'm all over the place. I'm in studio when I can be, but I'm really the guy who's going to be at the rink and talking to players, which is really what I love to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that, and you are our second All City guest on here. We've had Mario Tirabassi on from
Oh,
CHGO,
nice.
so we're collecting you all like Infinity Stones slowly over the course of our career. So we're going to have to figure out who we're going to have on next. But I find it quite interesting. I mean, I love all the things that you guys do at the All City Network. I think you all have there's a very different sort of style between each city, each show, and from having watched some of your guys' stuff, and how it kind of compares to things like CHG, I think you've all got like really good styles, and you having the opportunity to to travel, especially, and to be sort of out and about on those road games and everything. I think that's incredible. Must be like a dream come true kind of dream job sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I actually started, I didn't know no sort of journalism school or anything like that. I was a science major in college. I didn't even technically graduate. Don't tell my boss. But I during COVID, I just started writing on a blog about the Stars. Stars were my favorite team growing up. I lived in California and New Jersey, so I don't know why they were, but I just started kind of writing about them, and then got a little bit of attention from a couple of blogs and just built from there. And I lived in Dallas for 2 years before that, working kind of independently, and then kind of said, you know what? It's not going to happen down here. They were cutting, the Athletic, I think, cut their writer. The Morning News was cutting their writers and cutting their budget and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, you know what? Maybe it's not the best thing. I had a girlfriend back home. I moved back to New Jersey for 2 years, and then boom, got a phone call. Hey, All City's launching in Dallas, and this is the real deal. So I took a leap with it, and it's just a lot of fun. But as you said, I think that's the best part about All City is none of the shows are the same. Even in our
Mm.
network, the DLS Cowboys show is pure chaos.
Oh, I
Just a
can
bunch
imagine.
of yeah, just a bunch of dudes and one former player just screaming at each other for an hour. And then you have some like DNVR Avalanche is more of a fan type of driven one. They're
Mm.
screaming and cheering. We kind of all worked, me, Owen, and Luds. Obviously, Luds won the Stanley Cup a couple times as a player, but he also worked in as the broadcaster for a little bit, with Daryl Razor. Can't remember what year, but and then Owen was the radio guy for 10 years. So we all kind of have that media side more, we keep it funny too. We're not too serious, but that's kind of the cool part about it, is that everyone has their own vibe and gets to kind of just do what feels right, and hopefully it sticks. And ours has seemed to stick, which has been great.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. It's fantastic. Like you say, the dynamic that you guys all have together as well is awesome. So you guys do an absolutely fantastic job over there, man. There, so
Thank you.
keep it all up, and yeah, I really look forward to seeing what you guys have sort of moving forward. Um, so before we move into the current season, as we're 40 something days away now from puck drop on the 26-27 season, just taking a couple of minutes to reflect. I know it can't come soon enough. Honestly, I'm dying out here. I need it back. Just a little
Agreed.
reflection on the end of last year. Obviously, first round playoff exit, 4-2 against Minnesota. Nathaniel, my co-host, is a big Minnesota Wild fan, so he was thrilled. But obviously, it was Glenn Gullutson's first year back behind the bench in his second stint, if I'm correct.
Yep.
And what were your thoughts as a whole on kind of how they performed last season? Obviously, they were fantastic during the regular season. Just a really really tough first round matchup to get through.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the regular season. They had a lot of moving parts. They had, I think the stat was that one of the first times, I think, in NHL history, they had 0 games with a full healthy roster. 0 all season. Didn't have a single game that they had every player available, and that's crazy. Obviously, Tyler Seguin missing most of the season helps that a lot to hit that number, but they just couldn't catch a break. Jamie Benn goes down with a collapsed lung in the second preseason game, I think it was. Then he ends up with a concussion and a broken nose later in the year. Thomas Harley, Liam Bichel, Nils Lundqvist all break their feet. You had players going down left and right. Duchesne with a really bad concussion that lingered on for months. The list just goes on and on. Miro Heiskanen gets hurt again. Jason Robertson gets hurt. Everyone just kind of found, other than Wyatt Johnston, who never seems to get hurt, knock on wood, everyone found their an injury, and it took a toll on them. They're missing Rope Hintz the entire playoff series and most of the end of the year. Mikko Rantanen was just never the same after getting hurt in the Olympics for Team Finland. So they dealt with a lot. So I'll say with that and the fact that they have a new coach, a new system defensively, some new faces, I think they did a good job of handling that. They were streaky. I'll say that they didn't feel like they really had their game all year, like consistently. It felt like, okay, that was a really rough 7 games. They go 2-0-5 or whatever, or 2-5-0, whatever it is. They just don't look at their scoring. And then they went on their crazy run where they were, had points in 15 straight games and went 14-0-1, which is ties a franchise record. And that was like, okay, everything's clicking, but then they kind of fell back into a little bit of a hole and had to struggle a little bit. So they never found their game where it was just like, wow, they're dominant all year long. Look out. But the big one was their power play. Their power play was insane. Wyatt Johnston destroyed every franchise record in power play goals. And what do you think he finished with? I can't even remember what it was. But 27, something like that, but just ridiculous numbers. And they went as far as their power play went. When their power play was quiet, they struggled to kind of find that scoring behind that. And that is the story of the playoff series. They had no 5-on-5 offense whatsoever. Their power play was still good, so they had a chance, and they found a way to win a couple games. And somehow, for being outplayed pretty heavily, out-hit, and definitely outplayed 5-on-5, they were Wyatt Johnston hitting a post away from going up 3-1 in that series.
Yeah,
that shows you that it's a pretty damn deep team if they're able to overcome that. They were just not creating shots. Nothing was going on. Jake Ottinger wasn't at his best either, so it's not like their goaltending was keeping them afloat. But they found a way to be, as I said, 1 inch away from a 3-1 series lead, and then from there it just kind of imploded, and they couldn't find the scoring, couldn't stop Minnesota. They think they got pushed around in that series. And now the kind of the nervous part for me, I've been big on this. I was big on it last year, and I'm big on it going into this year. They didn't get better. They didn't get better last year on paper. They lost Granlund, they lost Marchment, they lost Donoff, they lost a lot of goals. Yeah. And they replaced that, I guess, because Wyatt was ridiculous, Robertson was ridiculous, Rantanen was ridiculous. But again, this summer, they didn't get better again. They add a depth forward in Yoel Kiviranta, who's a fan favorite, of course, but he's not. I think he scored 3 goals last year, so he's not a goal scorer. He's not going to add much. They're missing a top 6, maybe 2 top 6 forwards. So there's just a lot of question marks. So that's kind of my worry of this summer and even last year is just how deep is this team? Can they overcome one or two things going wrong? And that's just gonna have to wait to find out.
Yeah, no, that was going to be sort of my main point. Is certainly what you mentioned on how streaky they were last season. I mean, me and Nathaniel cover, each week we go through all 32 teams in the league, all their results that week. Everyone who was at a point per game or better, and Dallas were one of those teams who, at times through the year, just felt like a constant yo-yo. I mean, due to the kind of nature of the Central Division, it didn't massively impact their overall standing. I mean, them and Minnesota just kind of swapped places,
Yep.
kind of seemingly every other week. But the depth in that roster is for me, it's one of the best in the league. I mean, I've admired Dallas for a long time. Chicago fandom aside, I love the way the Stars operate as a franchise. I think the way that they maintain themselves being competitive, the way that they kind of move guys out, bring new guys in. Constantly reloading the draft pools and prospects and making sure that you've constantly got high quality skill players there. I do have some concerns, as you mentioned, the fact that didn't necessarily get a ton better this year. But there is, I suppose, like a ceiling. I mean, if you was to go into next season and to avoid a large amount of those injury issues, and like I said, some of them were just you just couldn't legislate for. Some of the and concussions are always so difficult because you never know how long it's going to impact someone. Yeah, okay, you've got the initial hit that causes the concussion, but you don't know how long those effects are going to linger on for. Sometimes it can be 2, 3, 4 months down the line, and someone's still not quite sort of, their head's not back in the game, literally. So I think if they can avoid a lot of those mitigating factors from last year, the injuries, everything like that, I mean, I think they are. I certainly think they're playoff bound again next year, or this year. Sorry, I think their team is outstanding. Like you said, Wyatt Johnson was an absolute freak on the power play last year.
Yeah.
It was just ridiculous. It was just seemingly record after record, and every time I'm not sure where they ended up ranking out power play wise in the league, but
I
they
think they were
must have been.
second.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Can't for the life of me think who they finished behind, but
Yeah, it's usually Edmonton. I won't, that's my
yeah,
guess, but I don't
yeah,
remember this year specifically.
yeah. But in terms of the sort of outs, obviously you've lost Bork, you've lost Labushkin, obviously Petrovic and Kolyachonok have gone as well. Obviously not as big a losses, but certainly Bork and Labushkin, I think. I again personally, I really like Maverick Bork. I think he's a really talented player. Maybe someone who was just kind of struggling to find a place in the lineup to fit, but he's one of these guys that if you're going to want to keep Jason Robertson around long term, there's going to have to be some sacrifices there, and that certainly kind of, to me, certainly seemed to be a part of the reasoning behind why he was moved.
Yeah, with Bork, he's one of those guys that was honest with us every day. I'd go in and talk to him and be like, "Wow, you've had a great week. You scored twice." And he's like, "I can be better. I want to score more." And last year he scored 20 goals, right? Which
Yeah.
is pretty good for a guy who's finishing his second year. Basically, the first time he ever really had a full trust because Pete DeBoer did not trust him and didn't give him the
Mm-hmm.
chance to play a whole lot. So Glenn Gulletson did, and he played in the top six most of the year, and he finished with 20 goals. And a lot of those, he got a couple empty netters, but a lot of those were driving to the net and doing the things that other people weren't necessarily doing on the Stars, and he was doing that. And then you still talked to him after the year, and you're like, "How's it feel? You're a 20 goal scorer. Does it feel like you've arrived?" And he's like, "I still haven't beaten a goalie clean on a shot." That's the kind of player he is. He just wants to be better all the time.
Yeah.
And he's a hard worker. I mean, he's a dominant. It's one of those guys where a lot of young players come to the NHL and they have trouble turning themselves from the guy who does everything to finding a role. Right? When you're a junior player or an AHL player and you're Maverick Bork, you're going to do everything for your team. You're out there
Mm-hmm.
25 minutes a game, your power play, your penalty kill, you're playing in the last minute, you're an extra attacker, you do everything. You're the guy. You not often does that turn you into the guy in the NHL. You can't have 20 the guys in the NHL, right? It's the best league in the world. So he had a little bit of balance finding that and trying to develop who he is. And then he really bought into the physicality of Glenn Gulletson, bringing in just going harder into the forecheck, winning more pucks, going right to the top of the crease and not moving away from it, which was a big thing for Stars in previous seasons. And he found it with 20 goals. But the problem is, what did he? I don't even remember what he signed for, but way more than the Stars could afford. I want to say it was like 5 or 6 million or something, right? Like they couldn't afford that. We were thinking if they could get him for 2, maybe they could fit him in, but not for that money. And that's just the way the NHL is going with the cap rising, the players demanding money. You got freaking Leo Carlson out here making $40 million a year or whatever he's getting. So like it just wasn't possible. They just couldn't bring him back for that kind of money. The only way he would have stayed is, as you mentioned, if they ended up moving Jason Robertson, which they tried to do. They're kind of dusting that under the rug a little bit. The fact that they publicly tried to trade Jason Robertson 2 or 3 times and tried to trade Thomas Harley. Yeah. And now it's like, okay, you're back. We kept you. How is that going to turn out? So for me, I was actually big on nothing against Jason Robertson. The guy is a freak goal scorer. But I was big on the fact that maybe they should trade him because instead of one guy who could score 40 for you, you get 2 guys that can score 20 or maybe 30, 25, whatever it might be. And all of a sudden your top 6 looks really deep versus just you have a ridiculous top line and a couple really good players below that. I mean, the Stars are a Tyler Seguin injury away from having a really weak top 6. And I when I say weak, I don't mean like comparing it to, no offense, to Chicago or someone like that. I'm comparing it to what wins you a cup. You know what I mean? Like yeah. I'm saying that it's weak to what compares against the Florida Panthers and the Minnesota Wild and the Colorado Avalanche. So I just think that Maverick Bourque was one I was really bummed left because he's going to go. I mean, good for him. He went and made the money. He got a good deal. He's going to go play probably second line center in Nashville, and he's going to have a really good chance to score 30 goals and have a huge role. It's good for him. But it's tough for the Stars because they finally found a right wing top 6 to say, hey, we finally have someone to move Tyler Seguin down to the third line where he probably belongs as an older player that gets injured a lot. And now it's like, okay, just kidding. Tyler Seguin, we need you to come off another huge surgery and play most of the year, but also still be a point per game guy. That's a tough ask. So there's a lot of balls in the air, I think, is the key for the Stars right now. And Bourque leaving puts even more up there.
Yeah, absolutely. It was 6 by 5.5 that he signed for in Nashville, which, so,
that's not happening here.
I mean, that's a great deal. Don't get me wrong. I think that's a deal that will be an absolute bargain in a year's time. I think with the way that he's projecting, and it's really. It always makes me really happy to know that like guys who I like watching on the ice are also like really nice guys in the locker room as well. Always makes it easier to root for someone, and I've always been a big fan of Maverick Bourque as someone who's not. I mean, he's not a physically dominant looking kind of guy. He's not a Mason Marchment or one of these. He's not 6'4", 6'5", but he's got the willingness to go into those areas where sometimes bigger players don't want to go. And me and Nathaniel always talk about the difference between being big and playing big. Certainly been a lot of issues on Chicago with a lot of guys who are gigantic but refuse to throw a hit. But that problem's in Buffalo now, so it's not my problem. But yeah, I think he's, it is a big loss for that team. And, when you look at the way that the Dallas Stars are kind of constructed at the moment, I mean, you kind of look at them and think, oh man, they're a Maverick Bourque or someone like a Logan Stankoven away from being a really, really effective top 6. I mean, that kind of whole saga with Rantanen was, I mean, it was all kind of really weird in the way it played out. But I'm happy for Rantanen that he certainly seems settled in Dallas, and the production's coming. He had a really good regular season. Obviously, that injury at the Olympics it's just a pain, isn't it? They go away, they represent their country. Obviously, it means so much to them, but the Stars fan in you is like, really wish you hadn't gone and got picked up an injury there. But I mean, moving on to the large elephant in the room of Jason Robertson. obviously it was kind of one of the most protracted stories of the kind of, from the end of the season right up until free agency. And Willie, won't he? I think it was 15 million from Seattle. I think that he maybe turned down something
Yep.
similar from St. Louis. Ends up re-signing for 1 year at 12 million. No massive fanfare on the social media aspect. Just like, let's just run it back for another year and let's see how we do. But is there any risk that there's some damage in the relationship between the higher ups and Robertson himself, coaching teammates? Is the dynamic? I mean, obviously you know the guy personally in the locker room. I don't know kind of what his personality is, other than he loves his cats.
Yes, he
But
does.
but I don't know how the dynamic will potentially shift, or will it even shift at all?
Yeah, it won't. I don't buy into the players part of it. You know, there were some rumors that the players were a little ticked off about him kind of going through this whole thing and not just taking 12 million like they offered him originally in Dallas. But I don't really buy into that. I know that that room is so close. I just don't see that being true. But the side of it that I worry about is, well, obviously the risk of the deal he signed too for both sides, for him and Dallas. I mean, he can go out and have a bad year or get injured or something like that and change everything about his future. Whereas the Stars could end up being in a worse spot where the cap's going up. He's getting even more attention, and
Mm,
they could lose him for nothing if he becomes a UFA at the end of the season. So
yeah.
it's a lot of pressure on both sides. But the in terms of relationship, the only thing I kind of that stuck in my head a little bit when Jason Robertson did his Zoom like press conference thing, he kept saying they have my rights, so this is how it turned out. Or I'm paraphrasing, but like, they have my rights, so this was kind of the only ending and possible, or whatever it might have been. It wasn't before that had happened when he turned down Seattle and St. Louis and who knows who else that wasn't made public. It felt like, okay, he wants to stay in Dallas above everything else. He's going to take a pay cut. He's going to take 12 or 13 million. He's going to stay here for 8 years. Now I don't really feel that way. Now I almost feel like he wants to stay in Dallas because he kind of had to. Like let's be
Mm,
honest. Not a lot of people want to go play in Seattle right now, and I know they're on the rise, and they will be eventually. They're going to be a good team, but right now it's somewhere they can't buy a superstar. They literally
nope.
tried to buy Jason Robertson and Artemi Panarin with big money, and they both said no. And who knows who else? Like I said, so it's a that St. Louis is not also isn't in a great spot. They're not a team that's going to win in the next
No.
3 to 5 years probably. So you can make some argument that it was just he didn't want to go to those teams, and the other teams that he probably wanted to go to couldn't afford to pay him or didn't have the return that Dallas wanted to make a trade. But the other side of it is I just wonder if I overplayed his commitment to Dallas, and it was more of a situational. He's a restricted free agent. The Stars had his rights for him to sign a deal that chances were 80-20 that it was going to be in Dallas. They signed for 1 year. He says, "Give me the money you initially offered me, and we'll talk about it later." I don't know if I'm wrong here. I don't know that he's going to sign here.
Mm.
Mike Owen Newkirk, our co-host, is like January 1st, long-term 7-year deal. It's coming. I don't feel that way. I just don't. I think that the market's going up so much. He's going to be able to demand whatever the hell money he wants.
Yeah.
And if you're the Stars, sure, the cap's going up. Tyler Sagan's contract comes off next year. So you're going to have space to pay him more. But should you? To build a team that's going to win a cup, should you give this guy 18 million or whatever it's going to end up being? Or is LA going to offer him that, and Robertson's going to want to go back to where he, where he grew up and be near family and go play for the Kings? I don't know the answer, but I'm just a lot less certain about him re-signing here than I was before this whole saga started.
Yeah, yeah, I certainly echo a lot of the way it all kind of seemed like, and it's a really difficult situation because obviously they're in a little bit of, not that they're in complete salary cap hell right now, but they couldn't have gone out
Close.
and offered him. Yeah, it's getting there. But I mean, like you said,
Yeah.
you've got that Sagan deal coming off next year, which is what, just shy of 10, I think, something like that,
Yeah,
9.85.
9.85, I think.
So I don't imagine him re-signing in Dallas, or if he does, it will be on a Jamie Benn type,
Yeah.
$28 and a bag of chips, or whatever it was Jamie Benn signed for.
Yeah, a lot of bonuses.
Yeah, a lot of bonuses. Um, and yeah, I'm with you, man. I just, it all seemed a little bit kind of, I've re-signed in Dallas, not because there was, someone pointing something at me to sign here, but they have my rights. I'm kind of stuck
Yeah.
here for another year. We're going to kick the can down the line for another year. But the only problem is, in doing so, you cause way more issues in the fact that he's a UFA next year. You don't know what kind of year he's going to have. I mean, to all intents and purposes, Jason Robertson, there's no reason why he couldn't have a year exactly like the one he's just had. But, you can't litigate for things like, injuries
Yep.
and, who says he doesn't take a Matt Duchene size concussion next year? I mean, hopefully not. But you never know with these things. So, and that's a big gamble for him to take. That's a big gamble for, obviously for the Stars to take. And if he does have a similar year to what he has last year, where does that figure go? Does it start ramping up into the 16, 17? Obviously we've got Carlson at 18, Celebrini at, they're obviously kind of right at the top at the moment, but you then risk that figure going up even higher, or they try and lock something in early from January. Maybe they try and offer him, I don't know, 14 and a half or something, and maybe he signs for that. But I don't know. I don't know. But the only thing that's for sure is if it is decided that they decide on moving him before free agency next year, I mean, that's a return and a half that you'd get for him in terms of, like I said before, restocking those prospects, getting in the guys that you need. I mean, would you entertain some sort of trade to LA involving Quinton Byfield plus? Like, that's just me spitballing off the top of my head. But if that's somewhere that he really wants to go, I mean, he's someone that would garner a large return.
Yeah, the tough part is, if you want to move him next year, like as you said, there is a little bit of time after the season. So they could say, we're going to trade you. Let's go through a playoff run right now. It's risky, but the other side of it is, if you're going to trade him, this is the better part about the summer. If they were going to trade him, if it does end up that he go play somewhere else, doing it this summer lets them know their roster, come into the year, training camp, fall, everything with that team, whoever that is. Let's say it's Matthew Nyes and whatever else that it was going to be when he was going to Seattle. If you trade him during the season, you're throwing everything off. You're basically, you're not punting, because you can still put out a good team and who knows what kind of run you can go on, but you're putting a big wrench into your plan of trying to win a cup. And I know this isn't their best chance to win a cup this year as the way their team stands. It seems like the Stars window is right now, but it almost feels like there's a gap in that window. There's a little bit of cloud in the window, a little rain maybe for the Dallas people, covering up that part of
For
the
once.
window where this year feels like it would surprise me if they won the cup. Now they could go out and make some huge moves in March and make their team much better somehow, but the way the roster stands right now, it's not a cup team to me. So you go out and you trade Jason Robertson in at the deadline, let's say, because there's a deal you can't say no to. You're then throwing a bunch of new players into a mix and saying, let's go try to make the playoffs and win a cup in a month. That's a really hard thing to do. So it's just a lot of risk. All the different angles. Any way you look at it, it's a risk for every side. You don't have to look further than the last guy that this happened to in Dallas, which is John Klingberg. John Klingberg was offered, I'm not going to remember the number now. Let's call it 8x8 because it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And 8x6, something like that. And he said no. And he banked on himself and had one more year, and he had a bad year and he never signed again. He got traded. He's been traded everywhere else. He's been injured everywhere else. And he never made that money back. And
No.
that's a real risk. I'm not saying Jason Robertson's going to be that. He has proven to everybody every year that he should be a perennial 40 goal, 80 to 100 point scorer for his whole career. He's done it every year, basically. He broke the record for most points in Stars history in his one season, but there is risk to it. And I just worry. There's a lot of things this year. I just wrote about this a couple of days ago where this Stars team could do a lot of great things, but it feels like they need a lot to go right for that to happen. And that's true for every team. But there's times where it's more true for certain teams, right? Like I don't Colorado could have a couple injuries to some key players. I don't think they're just going to drop out and not be a great team. Whereas Dallas is so so close to that edge for me that it feels like they might have trouble overcoming a couple of those hiccups that they were previously built to overcome. So it's just going to be something to wait and see. But for Jason Robertson, it's something that it's risky for both sides, and it's going to come down to, we have no clue how each side is feeling, and that's fun and scary at the same time, because we could get an announcement January 1st that he signed, or it could just start every day after January 1st is going to be stressful for Stars fans, because it's going to get closer and closer to, oh no, they're still having trouble finding a number. What's going to happen?
Yeah, and those kind of contract anxieties are just like, for fans, people in your position, guys covering the team, they are absolute hell. I've just gone through it somewhat with, the minute that Leo Carlson was offer sheeted and Bedard hadn't signed yet, I was like, oh my God, like someone's gonna do it. Detroit are gonna come in and offer 24 million or so, I don't know. So yeah, but it's a really like anxious spot to be in. And it also it runs the risk of creating that distraction as well. If he doesn't
Oh yeah.
re-sign January 1st, if every day, people are in the locker room, every time they speak to the coach, every time they speak to Robertson himself, oh, where are we at on the new contract? When are those discussions going to take place? Are you wanting to stay here long term? Are you not wanting to stay here long term? Are you wanting to go play in Pittsburgh with your brother? All those,
Yeah,
that kind of,
exactly.
yeah, that rhetoric just ends up, spinning around again and again and again. And I've no doubt that, I mean, it happens to everyone. It'll happen to Quinn Hughes this year if he doesn't get an extension sorted in Minnesota. That New Jersey conversation's just going to revolve around again and again. It's a really sort of difficult space to be in. So just as we kind of as we sort of move towards sort of wrapping this up, like you mentioned, I don't know if Sagan's gonna continue beyond this year. I don't know if Jamie Benn's going to continue beyond this year. My thought is probably not. I would imagine this is probably the sort of last rodeo as such for
Feels like it.
yeah. I mean, he's taken that, I think it's what, like 875,000, I think, something like that, to come back for one more year. I mean, those two are pillars of the Dallas Stars. I have no doubt both jersey numbers will go up in the rafters. They are both icons of the team. They are icons of the I would say of Dallas itself. They've had a big impact from their longevity of being there. And how do you feel the Stars are ready in terms of moving on from those two guys? Obviously, I know they're not the players that they were, but I mean, the impact they have in the locker room, especially Jamie Benn, he's a big personality. Do you feel as though the Stars are equipped with like who they have in their leadership group at the moment to sort of move on from, passing the torch, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a good point, because you're never fully ready. Like you mentioned, Jamie Benn's been the captain, the longest tenured captain in history. And Tyler Seguin has always been kind of like his Robin a little
Yeah.
bit. Where he just, because Jamie, he has a big personality, but not in the public. He doesn't say a whole lot in his interviews.
No.
He's not a big talker. So Tyler was kind of that guy for the fans and for the media, where Jamie can be himself in the room. He's apparently just a great dude to his teammates. He cares about his team more than anything else. And he's always got his teammates back. So I don't doubt that. I wish you could see it sometimes. I try
Yeah.
to see it, but he just, when you're in front of the media, even not in front of a camera, he's straight faced and
Close
pretty
book.
short answers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas Tyler is literally someone who will put his foot out behind you and try to trip you as you're walking backwards in the dressing room, and then laugh at you like that. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. Or kind of elbow you when he walks into the bathroom next to you. Like he's a huge personality, a very funny guy. He makes the room light. You can't just have Jamie Benn without Tyler Seguin, or the room would feel like Colorado's does, where Nathan McKinnon feels like he's sucking the air out of your room because he's so serious all the time.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really hard. But with saying that, they have built a incredible core of different tiers. This has kind of been the conversation around Dallas for the last 3 years. Now they've gotten rid of Bork and Stankoven, who were a big part of their youngest tier,
Hmm.
but they still kind of figured out a way to have tiers of Ben, Duchesne, Sagan, those guys up there. Then you have the Miro and Essa Lindell and Rope Hintz and Jake Ottinger. And then you have the all the way at the bottom, which was Bork. It's still Johnston. It's still younger players that they have. And even now, Ritzkovian and some of the guys that are just coming in, they have a really good tier of layers. So to me, they have their next captain in their lineup already. Whether that is Mikko Rantanen, Jamie Benn, like I said, I agree with you. I think this might be the last year. So if this is the last year, are they ready to hand that captaincy over to Wyatt Johnston at the age of 25 or whatever he'll be? Or is it, or I don't even think he's that old. He's like 23. Or is it too early and they want to give it to Mikko Rantanen for a few years before Wyatt gets it? Or is it someone that we're not even thinking of, like Miro Heiskanen? I don't know the answer, but they have it there. So in terms of like literally handing over the leadership, they have the players, but it's going to be a huge change for this city. That they not only were these guys a huge part of their team in terms of, I mean, man, were they fun to watch when they were in their core or their prime at 2015 area, just lighting up the league and scoring. But they also were the faces of the rebrand down here when the Stars changed their uniforms and changed their logo and all this stuff and kind of said, we're done with being bankrupt and we're going to try to be a real team again. That was Jamie Benn being named captain and Tyler Seguin being traded. That was the same year. So, it's going to be a hard thing for them to look at this team without those players. Now, if you're looking at it this is not good. I was going to say, if you're looking at it in good news, it's not good news. But in that realm, they've also grown very accustomed to not seeing Tyler Seguin on the ice here because he's been hurt every year for the last basically 7 years and missing significant time, a lot of times being finished for the whole season. So nobody wants that. Everybody wishes they had another 4 years of Tyler Seguin 4 years ago. But if they're set up in terms of their personnel to be able to turn it over to a new leadership group, it's just who's that going to be with the actual C and who's it going to be below them, because there are plenty of options. A lot of people think it's Rantanen slam dunk. I think Wyatt Johnston's built to be a captain. I just don't know whether he's there yet as a young player, but they have plenty of options to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I do think that I think Johnston is surefire to be the captain of the Dallas Stars at some point in time. I don't necessarily think it's right now. Like you say, I think maybe Rantanen would be the pick, for now, for the next few years, just whilst Johnson continues to develop, shatter a few more records, and then he can take over eventually. But yeah, no, that's kind of right. And I was kind of getting like somewhat emotional. I didn't really kind of like that, but I mean, I've been a hockey fan since 2014, 2015, and I'm now kind of reaching that stage in my life where all of the guys who were like big in the league when I first got into watching hockey, they're all retiring. We are eventually going to see the last of Crosby, Malkin, Ovechkin, Kane, Stamkos, all these absolute, obviously just having kind of Jonathan Taves retire after his career and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I always think back to, again, it was like one of the first kind of pieces of hockey media I ever saw was the Tyler Seguin body issue magazine shoot that he did back in the day. I was okay, so that's what hockey's all about. Okay, and I've always had an affinity for the Dallas Stars, especially. I think they're I've always kind of just really been into the uniforms, really into the team and everything. Sam, this has been absolutely fantastic. I've absolutely loved hearing everything you've had to say in relation to the Stars. Just before we wrap up, do you have time for a couple of quick fire questions before just before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'm here. My dog might bark next to me, but other than that, I'm here.
All right. Okay. Cool. So just 3 or 4 quick fire questions for your opinion. Okay. So to kick us off, favorite. You mentioned you travel a lot for work. Favorite city outside of Dallas that you visit kind of with work. Where's the place you have the most fun?
Montreal, hands down. Montreal is the best place to go see a hockey game and experience a city around a hockey environment.
Oh, love that.
Exactly.
I love that. Who's the player in the kind of Dallas Stars locker room who would be different from what you would sort of expect? Who's the kind of maybe the unsuspecting good take, the guy who's
Mm.
maybe funnier than you would expect them to be, or
Oh, Thomas Harley.
yeah,
Yeah, he Thomas Harley. If you don't look deeper into what he's saying, you think he's just a mean old grump, and he is an old man in his soul, but he has a dry humor that is absolutely hysterical if you really look into what he's saying.
oh, I love that. Yeah, no, it's always. I mean, obviously, hockey players are renowned for having the most flamboyant of personalities, but I think even when they can
Yeah,
bring like that dry sense of humor, I just think that's terrific. Um, are you a ribs or a wings guy?
wings, definitely
Wings.
wings.
Okay.
Yeah,
Dry wings or wet wings?
dry actually. I love a good dry rub, buffalo dry rub. That's my move. I'll eat 50 of those.
Yeah, yeah, right on. Yeah, I'm a dry wing guy as well. Me and Nathaniel actually yesterday we were at the UK's like largest chicken wing festival. It was absolutely unreal. We just ate wings all day. It was just, but
Love
like these
that.
some of these like really niche. Like they had, it was like a competition. So they had like the buffalo category, the barbecue category. They had the wild wing category for some like really out there wing combinations. We had a
Hmm.
white chocolate raspberry matcha wing, which everything about that suggests it should be awful. And it was one of the nicest things we've ever had. There was
No way.
a pecan pie wing. It
Wow.
was just yeah, these sweet chicken wings were really catching us off guard. Um, Final question: will Dallas Stars make the playoffs next season?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. I completely agree. Right, Sam, this has been absolutely awesome. Where can any of our listeners, where can they find your stuff? Anything you write, anything you cover, anything you speak? Where can they find you?
Yeah, we're so DLS Sports is our YouTube page. That's where you can find all, not just the Star Show, but all the shows we do at DLS. I think alldls.com is the website, and then at Sam Nestler, me on Twitter, you'll see I'll post all the shows and all the articles and all the nonsense that I find. Honestly, if you want to follow me, it's for the nonsense from the locker room and my weird opinions. It's not for my writing. So go check it out on Twitter, number one.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Well, guys, as Sam said there, go follow everything to do with DLLS. They're doing some amazing work over there at All City and at DLLS as a whole. If you guys want to find us on either X or Instagram, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, you can find us at the PBP Podcast. You can also follow us on TikTok at Penalty Box Perspective. You can see mine and Sam's glorious faces if you want to watch the podcast on either YouTube or on Spotify. We post the video there as well. And until next time, guys, we'll be back. We've got another exciting guest coming at the end of this week, so keep your eyes peeled for that and your ears ready. But we will see you on the next one. Sam, thanks again, buddy.
Yeah, of course. Thanks a lot. Go follow this podcast. It's great. Get more hockey in the UK, man.
Oh, absolutely. Cheers, Sam. Take it easy, bud.